We are recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this AEM Center webinar. We're so happy that you're taking time out of your afternoon today to join us for this webinar, Features in Accessibility, where we're going to be looking at Read and Write from Texthelp. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping details. First of all, we have captions for this webinar, so I want to thank Bobby from ACS Captions, who's providing our captioning this afternoon. To view those captions, Zoom has changed things a little bit. We used to tell you to just look for that closed caption button in your Zoom toolbar, but now you have to select more. So if you look in your toolbar, there'll be a more button, has these three little dots on it, and then choose show subtitle if you want to see the captions. Then those captions will appear along the bottom of the screen. We want to encourage you to use the text chat. We already started sharing some information in the chat, where we're from, what our role is. So welcome you to do that. Want to get to know each other through the chat. But make sure when you share it in the chat to choose all panelists and attendees. So that way you're not sending the message to an individual person, but you're sending it to the entire room so everybody can see your messages. So we welcome your input, your insights in the chat. Also, if you have any questions, the chat is the perfect place to post those questions. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat during the presentation, and I'll make sure to flag your questions so that we can bring it up to the presenters. So I want to remind you that this presentation is being recorded and that you'll find the recording on the same page where you registered for the webinar on the AEM Center website. I'll also share a short URL that will allow you to get there much easier. Leslie has already entered into the chat, but I'll read it out loud as well for those of you listening to the recording. It's bit.ly, bit.ly, then it's /AEM in all caps. So that's for accessible educational materials. And then lowercase read, write. So those two words together in lowercase. And so that will allow you to not only access the recording when we post it, which will be in about a week because we send it out for professional captioning, but you'll also be able to access a handout that we've prepared in coordination with our presenters. It has a number of resources that you'll want to access after the presentation, and you'll also find the slides from today's presentation. So we welcome you to check out those supporting materials so that you can continue your learning even after today. So our goal for today, we're really excited about this presentation that we're doing in coordination with a really good partner of ours at the AEM Center in Texthelp. If you go to the AEM Center website, there is a read aloud feature built into our website. And if you've used that feature, you're using Texthelp technology. So we're really excited about that partnership and look forward to continuing it over the many years to come. So our goal today is to really learn about one of the flagship Texthelp features or tools, which is Read and Write, and how you can use that tool to support literacy and executive functioning and really help all your learners become more independent and resourceful, no matter where learning takes place. We know right now that could be in person, that could be remote, could be a combination of different settings. So how do we make our learners independent and resourceful so that they can succeed no matter where this learning takes place? And then we're going to also learn some tips and strategies for implementing Read and Write in the classroom to support learning preferences and needs. So really looking at how we can support the implementation of universal design for learning. For those of you that don't know, the National AEM Center is based at CAST, where the Universal Design for Learning principles were pioneered and continue to be developed. So we're really excited about this. So I am going to turn it over to our presenters, but I'll just do a brief introduction and then they'll take it away from there. So we're joined today by Joni Deckner, who's a Territory Director for Texthelp. And then we're also joined, very excited about this, to have these two perspectives. We also have Kelly Culp, and she's a high school English teacher at Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation. So with the introduction out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to Joni and Kelly, and I look forward to hearing what they have to share.
Thank you. I'm going to take over and present my screen here.
And so I'm really excited to be with everyone today. It's a real pleasure for us to be partnering with the AIM Center. And I just want to thank Louise for having us here and thank Kelly for taking time out of her really busy teaching schedule to be with us today and share her perspectives. Um, so as Louise mentioned, my name is Joni Degner, and I've been a partner with CAS and the UDL IRN. I've also been a secondary language arts teacher, and now I'm a full-time text helper. So I pour myself into supporting schools in Indiana and Michigan and really helping them, um, fulfill their vision of, the best possible scenario for learning. And a lot of times that does mean using solutions like Read and Write, and partnering them with value systems and frameworks like UDL. And Kelly comes from a school that's like that. So again, really happy to have her with me. Um, so we have a number of solutions that you may have heard of at Texthelp, including RIQ. Equatio is our math and STEM solution. We have Snapfurter and Fluency Tutor, but as Louise mentioned, we're going to focus on Read and Write today. And again, our goal is to really kind of give you a kind of a sense of what Read and Write can offer learners and also you, but also to give you some really practical tips and strategies. I used Read and Write in the classroom myself for over a decade, and I know that Kelly is kind of coming up on that period of time of using Read and Write with her own learners as well. So we've got hopefully lots of good experience to share with you. You'll also hear me talk about using Read and Write with my own children, though, because Louise mentioned that we've got learning taking place in lots of places now, and a lot of the days for me, that means it's taking place at my kitchen table with my own second grader and my own seventh grader who are Read and Write users. So from time to time, you'll hear me reference them as well, and those experiences. So I want to just kind of provide some background knowledge, or maybe activate some background knowledge for those of you who are new to UDL or maybe have just only dabbled a little bit in UDL. I like to just kind of come to these three principles that really make up the UDL framework, and it really is about, Louise mentioned providing options that really work for students, whether we're talking about their needs or their preferences. And UDL is a framework that is indeed designed to reach every learner and to provide meaningful learning experiences and accessible learning opportunities by multiple means of engagement, which really is a principle that says, look, we all find relevance in different parts of learning. We all come to a learning experience with different background knowledge and different cultural experiences, and we all find different things to be important to us, right? So it really is about designing opportunities that many people can come to and find meaningful engagement. In terms of multiple means of representation, this is the principle of UDL that is designed to make sure that all learners get information in a variety of ways. We know that if students are not able to access learning, that there's very little chance we'll ever be able to get them to mastery. There's very little chance we'll be able to engage them, and very little chance that we'll be able to move them as expert learners. So we want to make sure that every student has access to the learning. And lastly, multiple means of action and expression, which is to say that there are many ways to navigate learning. There are lots of different tools like Read and Write to help us navigate learning and to help us help our learners express what they know. There are also a lot of different ways to strategize around learning, and in order for that to happen, it's really important for us to support learners' executive function, to support their self-regulation, and to make sure that they're able to take that learning that they have gotten and to be able to commute it into different contexts, whether that's outside of school or in other curricular areas in school. And I would just tell you that if you are interested in learning more about the UDL framework itself, to please go to cast.org. That's CAST.org, to learn more about the work of CAST and to learn more about the details and the guidelines that make up this framework. And I think it's very important to articulate, what is the goal of universal design for learning? And it sounds quite simple. It is to develop expert learners. But you might have some ideas about what that means to be an expert learner. With regard to the UDL framework, we really talk about trying to provide learning opportunities and to design, you know, experiences that help students become purposeful and motivated in their learning, meaning that they know why they want to learn something and that they have an intrinsic drive to learn more about it, that they know how to stick with learning even when it gets tough, that they're knowledgeable and resourceful, meaning that they have background knowledge and experience that they know how to activate and connect to new learning, but that they also have a sense of what resources are available to them and what resources really work for them. And lastly, students who are goal-directed and strategic. So students who are strategic have tried out lots of different strategies, which means that we have given them the opportunity to try out lots of different strategies, and they've developed a sense of what works for them. They know how to revise a strategy when it's not working for them, but ultimately what they know how to do is stick to a learning goal, and to eventually set challenging learning goals for themselves and get there. And one of the things um, that, Louise mentioned that Texthelp and CAS and the AIM Center have been partners for a long time. And the reality is that partnership is rooted in um, a fundamental belief that the right tools really can unlock a learner's potential. And I'll go a step further, as a former teacher and to have a teacher, with me here to say that the right tools can also unlock your potential as an educator, right? So much of how we feel about ourselves as teachers really does rest in how successful our students are. And so when we put the right tools in their hands, we know that they have an opportunity to be successful. I'm just going to kind of go over briefly. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about read and write because I always think it's better to see read and write in action. But I just want to kind of give you the very briefest overview, which is that read and write is a comprehensive literacy toolbar, meaning that it can help students read, write, research, organize. There's also testing support. Louise mentioned executive functioning, which you'll hear me and Kelly talk about a little bit today. There's also great academic language supports in here. And I got to be honest with you, this slide really needs to be updated because it says we have over 22 million users globally. It is actually, we have grown by leaps and bounds every single year, it seems, and we are actually at over 30 million users globally. And so Read and Write has got an awful lot of scale, an awful lot of flexibility. We're also COPA and FERPA compliant, so we take our data and privacy security policies very seriously where our students are concerned. But one of the things that I also really love about Read and Write, and one of the things that made it really easy for me to become a text helper, is that Read and Write really is something that doesn't like dump the table over and say, well, it's time to learn all new things now. What it really does is maximize the value of the resources that you're currently using. I always say we try to make sure that Read and Write will support students in all of the places where they love to work and play. So we have really flexible usability, quite device agnostic. You can be an Android user, a Mac user, a Google Chrome user, or a Windows user, and you'll find lots of great support from Read and Write. There's also an awful lot of LMS compatibility. We know that with COVID, one of the things that COVID really forced, I think, for a lot of school districts and institutions of education is that you had to kind of look at a comprehensive way to disseminate learning. And for a lot of people, that meant adopting a learning management system on a large scale. So we like to be in all of those places where we know that where teachers are creating instruction and students are engaging with instruction. We also have tools within the toolbar that makes PDFs accessible, and then of course any websites, and you'll see some of these tools demonstrated today. You'll see me primarily using Read and Write for Google Chrome because I'm a Google Chrome user, so you'll see me primarily using that one. And one of the things that I think is important to highlight as we kind of move into this demo portion of the webinar is that when learners cannot access text, they are likely to struggle everywhere. Now, we have learning environments that are quite blended these days, meaning that we're kind of aware that there's podcasts and there's videos and there's graphic organizers and even digital manipulatives and things like that. But the truth is, teaching and learning are still largely text-based scenarios. And so whether you have text that is inaccessible or whether you have a learner who is struggling with literacy, the reality is if they cannot access text, they are likely to struggle everywhere in lots of curricular areas, not just in a language arts class, but even something like science, something that they may really love. If they're a struggling reader, it becomes something more like a reading test if they don't have the right tools. So at Texthelp, it really is our aim to put the right tools in teachers and students' hands so that everybody has the opportunity to reach their full potential as a learner. So with that said, I want to just kind of make mention of the fact that Read and Write, I mentioned works in lots of different environments. And the first thing I want to show you is just, I'm going to go out to a web page. And this is just kind of a very basic science web page, that my students might be assigned to go out and look at. It's from the National Snow and Ice Data Center, which many of us might be checking out a little bit these days. But this is an article about Arctic climatology and meteorology. And so I just want to showcase some of the supports that Read and Write provides in a web page, and just know that a lot of these things that you see in a web page are also the same kinds of supports that are available in a Google Doc or a Google Form or a Google Slide and a PDF, and I'll kind of mention those specifically as we go along. So I'm just going to activate my Read and Write toolbar by clicking on this little purple puzzle piece. You're going to get some instructions and links for you to be able to go out. And if you're a K-12 educator, we actually provide premium access to Read and Write at no cost. And all you have to do is add it from the Chrome store and register your account with us, and you'll get the link to do that. And then you'll have this little purple puzzle piece right up here as well. And when you click on it in a web page, you'll see with one click, my Read and Write toolbar shows up. And in the web page, it's a floating toolbar, so you can grab it and move it, wherever you want to have it. And one of the things to know before I start showing you any of these tools is to know that we really do believe in making our tools customizable. We are aware that some students and some teachers are going to use different tools more than others, and sometimes that's based on need, and sometimes that's based on preference. And so one of the things that I like to show people first is that when you go over here to these three little dots, that's kind of become the synonymous icon with more or settings. So if you click on this, you will see that you can open up your options. And when you click on options, you'll see that you've got lots of ways to customize your text-to-speech, your prediction, even screen masking, and lots of other features. But one of the things that I think is very critical that I love to show people is that you can adjust the speed of the reading just by using this little slide bar right here. So you have heard me mention earlier that I have a second grader. And so when he is using the text to speech, a lot of times he moves it all the way back here so that it's reading a little bit more slowly. But one of the things that I used to love to do with my AP students when I was a language arts teacher, those advanced placement students were doing a lot of research because we were writing a lot of papers. And so we were actually kind of getting into skimming and kind of reading through something quickly. And so a lot of times they would kind of bump this up a little bit if they were going to just be kind of skimming an article to take in that information a little more quickly. If you have a student who is an English language learner, please be aware that for students who are English language learners, pacing of information is so critical. And so this is a really great way for them to take control of that and to have ownership over the pacing of that information, that they can move that back themselves. I also just want to quickly show, you see all those tools across the top of the toolbar. These are actually, you can toggle some of these on and off. So if you decide, I don't really use my dictionary and picture dictionary, you can turn them off. You can also grab these and drag them around. So if you want them to be in a different order, you can change the order of these. So just want everybody to be aware of that it's entirely possible to go in and customize this in a lot of different ways. So the first thing that I want to show you, and Kelly and I are going to kind of volley off of each other because um, although I'm a former educator who used read and write with my students, Kelly is in the classroom right now. In fact, Kelly's in her classroom right now. And so I'm just going to kind of demonstrate a couple of these tools, and then I'm going to let Kelly kind of talk to you about what she sees with her students as really valuable practice. And some of these are things that Kelly has introduced to her students, but some of these are practices that Kelly's students have stumbled upon themselves and decided like, hey, this is a strategy that really works for me. So the first thing I want to show you is that when you're in the web toolbar, you essentially have three ways of getting text to speech. And that's kind of our way of making sure that no text is left behind, that you don't have any text on a web page that's inaccessible to you. So I just want to kind of show you these. And the first is the hover speech. So it's the one that looks like a little thought bubble with the arrow on it. And you can see as I'm hovering over these tools, it's going to tell me what they are. So we've got a really pretty easy user interface here. When I click on hover speech, and then I can click anywhere in my article.
The unique geography of the Arctic leads to unique weather patterns that reappear in the region. The Arctic Oscillation is some weather patterns, such as cyclones or anticyclones. The unique geography of the Arctic leads.
This is my problem because I am moving my cursor around. Sorry, but I actually demonstrated for you what I wanted to demonstrate for you, which is that hover speech will actually begin reading wherever you place your cursor in the article. So if I want to begin at the top of the article and I want to start reading, and then I decide, no, I want to kind of scroll down and I wanted to read this section instead, the read aloud with hover speech is actually going to follow my cursor. I'll be really honest with you. I don't prefer that method of text to speech, but one of the things that my seventh grader really loves about it is that it does kind of, for him, mimic the way that he navigates a web page, which is like, I look up here and then I look down here and then I want to go back up here. And so he likes it because it mirrors the way that he wants to navigate the page. The way that I see lots of our users kind of getting the text to speech is by simply highlighting what they want to have read aloud, and then using the play, pause, and stop buttons, right? So if I hit play.
The unique geography of the Arctic leads to unique weather patterns.
And I can pause it, ask a question, take notes, and then I can unpause it and go back to that if I want to. I'm going to hit my stop button here and show you the third way. The third way to get a read aloud feature is really a critical piece to know about, because sometimes you'll get some text on a page that you can't simply highlight, and that even if you click on your hover speech, it won't read it for you. And that's because, for example, in this image over here, those words, sea level pressure, composite mean, those are actually part of that image, right? So what I really need is this screenshot reader. And I always think this looks like a little lasso. And when I click on this screenshot reader, it turns my my cursor into like a crosshair. And I can just drag a box around this text, and the screenshot reader is going to automatically OCR that text and then read it for me.
Sea level pressure composite mean, MB.
So I'm going to stop it right there. And so those are the three key ways to get a read aloud feature, to get that text to speech using Read and Write. So you've got the hover speech, got the play, pause, and stop buttons, and then you've got that screenshot reader for anything that might be inaccessible to you. Kelly, can you talk a little bit about, we know that we have some students who have the accommodation, right? That that they're required to have that accommodation because of, whether they've got an IEP or a 504, or maybe they're an English language learner. But can you talk to me about some of the ways that your students use text to speech, some of the most effective ways that you see it being used in your classroom?
Sure, Jody. One of the things that I found is that it's best to spend a good, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, because that's really all it takes is 15 or 20 minutes, and introduce this to all of my students, because you never know which tool is going to be helpful to which student, and they don't know which tool is going to be helpful to them until it's been introduced to them. I always teach a range of students, from some of our lowest students to our AP students, and I introduce it to all of my students. And the range of tools that all of my students use after we've introduced it is amazing. They use it for a variety of reasons. Some students might use it just because at this point in time, they've suffered from screen fatigue, and they don't want to continue to use their eyes to read more text. But if they can put their earbuds in and plug it in and listen to whatever article it is I've posted, that's one way that they don't have to continue to use something that's tired. But other students, they struggle with reading comprehension, but if they can listen and read those words on the screen, that really does help them with that skill of reading comprehension. It's just introducing the tools themselves is just one really simple way to be able to help kids in ways that you didn't even, or that they didn't even know that they needed help, or not even that they needed help, but can make them expert learners in ways that give them agency. So what a great way to help students.
I love what you're talking about, Kelly, because so you are at Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation, which is a, for a while has been, kind of a hub of UDL implementation in the
Yes.
K-12 learning environment. And one of the things I really love about their approach to using Read and Write, and your approach, but that you just talked about, is really an approach when you talk about like, hey, I introduce this to all my learners, whether I think they need it or whether I think they'll like it, I'll introduce it to all my learners. What we're really talking about here is inclusion without stigma, right?
Absolutely.
That nobody's afraid to use the little purple puzzle piece, because tons of people use the purple puzzle piece. Like all of my teachers have it, all of my friends have it, right? And I really love that, because when we are trying to create accessible learning environments, when we are trying to create learning environments where we truly want to reduce threats and distractions, we want learners to take over their learning and to say, hey, actually, this is how I really like, navigating this. I think that when you start seeing lots of people use these tools, what we're doing is like, look, so everyone struggles, right? It's not if, it's when, right? Everybody struggles. And so what I really love is that it's kind of like, look, this is really common for people to use supports, right? It's no longer something that's for those students, right? It's for all of us.
And I think that has become more clear to students who have never struggled before within this past year, and they didn't know that they struggled until now, and they didn't know how to fix it because it's never been a problem before. So introducing tools like this to them, they were like, oh, you mean there's a tool that can help me?
Right. There's something for that.
Yeah.
And so, you brought up a really great thing that I think that many of our participants probably are aware of, and that you as a teacher, I know, are certainly aware of, is that the past year, our teaching and learning experiences over the past year, it really has kind of redefined the struggling learner, right?
Absolutely.
The thing that you guys have heard me mention, and I talk about my kids all the time because they are some of my greatest teachers. So one of my seventh grader has no accommodations, right? So no 504, no IEP. He's always been a kid who kind of rolled along and didn't struggle too much. Um, and but the past year has been a real struggle. Remote learning has really shined a light on some of the ways that he really does need support, right? And those were maybe those were supports that he got in his traditional learning environment before, whether it was like a poster on the wall, or just being able to see what a peer was doing, or being able to immediately ask the teacher and get the question answered. And when he doesn't have those like traditional support that he finds in a learning environment, he really has gone from a kid who likes using Read and Write to a kid who needs to use Read and Write, right? And one of the things that I'll just go ahead and highlight while I'm talking about him is that he also attends BCSE, where Kelly is a teacher, and so um, he has had exposure to Read and Write since he was in the first grade. So when he was just a little guy, 6 years old, and now he's a preteen. He's getting ready to turn 13, and I also did a lot of materials adoption and resource adoption in my time. And one of the things that I know is that if you're a teacher, if you're a student, if you're a person who's a decision maker for a district, the thing that you really need when you are adopting solutions and looking at bringing something into the classroom is something that will really give you some serious scope and something that's going to give you some scale. And I'm blown away, to be honest with you. I mean, it's like I'm a text helper, so I can love on Read and Write all day long. But as a parent, one of the things that is so cool to me is that here's a kid who's been using Read and Write from the time he was 6 years old. And now here he is, he's 6 feet tall as a seventh grader and wearing size 11 and a half shoes and reading complex texts. And he's still using Read and Write on a daily basis. Now he's using it differently, right? Some of the tools that he relied on when he was a young emerging reader, it's different the way that he uses it now. And we're going to get into some of these tools that he really loves to use now. And so I'm just going to kind of transition us kind of into looking at a couple of different tools. There are three
And
tools.
if I could jump in real quick,
Please.
Johnny, just want to let everybody know, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning, we also have Caitlin or Katie Ross from Texthelp in the chat. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, as Joni demonstrates some of these tools and Kelly provides her insights, please share those questions in the chat. And either Katie or Joni or Kelly, any of us can answer those questions. So definitely there for you in the chat. All right, back to you, Joni.
Thank you. Yes, please do. We want you to engage with us. If you see questions or you want to say, hey, well, what is that thing over there? Or show me that again, or could it work with this kind of a scenario? Please don't hesitate to pipe up because we really do want to engage with you. So I'm going to move on and show you a few other tools that I think you're really going to love. There are three tools that are really, really powerful tools for a number of reasons. And they are the dictionary, the picture dictionary, and the translation tool. Now, you can have any of these open singularly, right? So I can have only my dictionary open, or I can have two open, or all three of these open at the same time. Now, the reason that I opened these three up at the same time is because, to be quite frank, I used it for a decade and didn't know you could use all three of these together. And they're really powerful partners when you start, using them in tandem or when you triangulate these tools, because let me just show you what happens. When I click on a word in this article, you can see that all three of these are populating. And so I've got a dictionary definition here. I've got a visual representation of what a cyclone is, but then I've also got, so I have my translation set to Spanish. And so what you see is the Spanish translation here. And there are a number of reasons why these three tools are so powerful together. When we talk about supporting academic language, we're not just talking about what does the word mean, it's what meaning can I attach to the word? How can I use that word? And if I'm an English language learner, what is that word in my home language, right? And so Read and Write also features many languages. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a language we don't have in our translation machine. So I'm really proud of that. But one of the things that I love to show this for is that, when I was a classroom teacher, and Kelly, you tell me if this is different for you, but I did support English language learners. And the elephant in the room for me was that I didn't always feel qualified to be doing it. And but I always had the desire to do it, which I think is really the case with most teachers. Like when you're whoever are the kids in front of you, those are your kids, right? And you want to help them unlock their potential. And so sometimes it's a struggle, because if you don't feel qualified to do it, if you feel like I was never trained as an English language learning, I don't know some of these strategies. Some of the things that you really just have to have are the right tools and awareness of resources. And so one of the things that we talk about in terms of strategies of supporting English language learners is comprehensible input. And if you're not an ELL person, but you are a UDL person, when I first learned about comprehensible input, I thought, well, this sounds an awful lot like multiple means of representation, because what you're talking about here is giving people different ways to perceive information, right? That I can see a representation of this visually, that I can get it in my home language, that I can see what this means, and that I can even click on it and hear it, right? That I can experience it in a number of different ways. So this is a really great way to support students who are English language learners. Kelly, if your kiddos are using these tools, how are they using it?
Well, actually, I just showed this to my student teacher a couple of weeks ago because she has taken over one of my courses, and we have a lot of English language learners in one section, but none of them are of the same language. And
Sure.
so she really was struggling with how to reach them effectively. And so I showed her this tool, and I showed her how to pull up all three of those windows, and how she could then use that to her advantage, but also to show with our learners, and how then they could read the same text, but also use that with our digital notebook that we're using for the text that we're reading in common. And her eyes kind of like popped out of her head. This is a resource that we have. But she had no idea. And so she has now gone through the process of showing our learners how to use it. And they use it now as a tool when they open up their digital notebooks. This pops up, and it's changed how they learn.
Well, I love what you're saying here, because you're also talking about creating resource awareness, right? Modeling it for students, calling them back to it, reminding them of the tools that they have. Because sometimes you learn about a tool, you really love it, and then, the rest of your headspace kind of fills up and you sort of forget about it. And so we do kind of need to be called back to our resources from time to time, and to see those modeled. And that's a really powerful strategy that you're talking about here. So I really, really love that. The dictionary, picture dictionary, and translator, again, can be used for English language learners, but I also think about emerging readers, right? So again, like my little guy, my second grader, to be able to have the dictionary and picture dictionary open. Also, I think about my secondary students who I know, they would come across words in their reading and they wouldn't look them up, right? Kelly, you have kids that do this. They skip over it and hope it's not important later. Right?
All the time is when that happens, all the time.
Sure. So this is a great way for, to create strategies for them, to show them the resources that are available to them. So you don't have to kind of like cross your fingers and hope it's not important later. You can learn what this word means, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
also just want to point out that any time you see this little play button is a time when you can get a read aloud. So if I click on this, I'm going to get a read aloud
Noun.
feature.
Meteorology rapid inward.
For any of these pieces where I see this play button, right? So anytime you see that, you can get a read aloud feature. You're also going to get that dual color highlighting, which has been shown to increase reading comprehension, along with the read aloud features that Kelly had mentioned. So I'm just going to close these down, and I'm not going to go across all of these tools. I want to show you some of my favorites, some of the ones that I think are most impactful. And the next ones I'm going to move on and show you are these highlighters, and these all, again, they tell you what they are. And I want to show you how to use these highlighters. There are really two ways to use them. I'm going to use these highlighters first to show you how to collect information, how to extract information from a resource. And then I'm also going to show you how to use them to create universally designed word lists, which are really fantastic for pre-teaching vocabulary, for students creating their own word lists and things like that. So without further ado, I'm just going to show you these. So one of the things that you might ask students to do would be to go out, and I want you to highlight information information. Let's say, kids, I want you to go out and highlight information in yellow that you think is going to be really important to, tomorrow's lab. And then maybe I want you to highlight information in green that you have a question about, right? And then maybe I want you to go in and highlight something that you want to know more about. So let's say that I read about this and I think polar lows are really interesting. So I'm going to highlight that in, we'll highlight it in pink, right? So you can use these highlighters in any way that you want. Kelly's going to talk about in just a minute how her kids use these highlighters. So this to me is a really great way to help students connect, to highlight critical patterns and information, to help them learn how to identify information in different ways. So I might ask kids to go out and identify this in terms of fact and opinion. I might ask them to identify examples of direct and indirect characterization. There's lots of different things that I might ask them to go out and identify, and these highlighters are a great way to attach meaning to the information that I am going to identify. Once I've highlighted my information, I'm going to go right over here and I'm going to click this button that looks like the arrows going in a circle. It says collect highlights. When I click on it, it's going to ask me which colors do you want to collect? How do you want to collect it? You can sort it by color. You can sort it by position in the document. I'm going to sort it by color. And I'm going to tell it okay. And what this is actually doing then, Read&Write is extracting these highlights and it's putting them into a new Google Doc on my Google Drive. And the beautiful thing, if you've ever been a teacher of writing, the beautiful thing is that what you've got right over here is then a link back to the original resource, right? So if you ever have kids, my kids used to do this all the time when I was a writing teacher. They highlight information and they copy and paste it into a document because they think, I want to get back to this later. And then they end up committing plagiarism because what happens is they just get disorganized, right? They don't remember where the notes came from, and push comes to shove, and they've got to get the notes into their paper. And so they put it in, cross their fingers and hope that it's okay. And then somebody like Kelly Culp says, this doesn't really sound like you, right? And so this is a great way to help students manage information from multiple resources, right? Kelly, how do your kiddos use this when they're doing research?
We definitely use it in this way when we're doing one of my favorite research projects where we are researching unsolved crimes for our American Mysteries class. We have very specific colors. If you're looking at biographical information, that information is yellow. If you were looking for the information on your crime, that is green. And if you are looking for information on the victims and the suspects, that information is purple or blue. And so it's very laid out very specifically for how to collect those highlights, and that keeps our learners very organized because they need that organization and straightforward set out. But you can also use this tool in a Google Doc, which is where we use it for AP. For AP, when we are writing our timed essays, our timed writings, practicing for the AP exam, we write our timed essay, and then afterwards we go back and we reflect, because reflection is so important. And I have them pull up their bar, and you highlight your thesis in yellow and your line of reasoning, and then your evidence is going to be pink or purple, and any of your commentary is blue, and whatever's left, if that's summary, it's going to be green. And we look from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, how do your proportions change? Because it should change over the course of the year. And that really gives kids a visual as to what their writing should look like and what it starts out as. And it gives us a great progression through the year, even just a snapshot of, boy, color-wise, is that what my paper should look like? Even before we start looking at the words themselves.
I love it. So what you're you're talking about highlighting critical patterns in your information, right? And being able to recognize patterns in my own work, and to set goals for myself, right?
Yes.
So using these tools to say, like, here's where I am, here's where I need to be, and I've got the tools to help me get there, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I'm going to come back over here, Kelly, and you can, if you've got more stuff to add, please go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say, it's also really great for proofreading. and helping others. And that also goes back to, if somebody doesn't feel confident in, and this goes back to earlier too with the text to speech, if somebody doesn't feel confident in reading the written words, but they want to listen to a peer's paper, they turn on that text to speech and listen to it and then have their comments on there. That's another feature that they know how to use because they know how to use all those features.
Right. And learners can have all the confidence in the world using these, especially in a collaborative document or something like that, because I am literally the only person who knows what supports I'm using, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody else knows if I'm using dictation, if I'm using text to speech. Nobody knows if I'm using the dictionary. I'm the only person who knows, right? And so to me, what it says is like, look, if I need to have this paragraph read 5 times, I can have it read 5 times. There's no stigma connected to that. There's no shame in that. I'm the only person who knows that I sat here and listened to it 5 times, right? So I want to show one more way that these highlighters can be used. I really love this. So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to, now what I'm doing is I'm going to go in and create some word lists for my kids. And I'm just going to highlight a handful of words and I'm saying like, this is a new, science unit that we're beginning. And so I'm going to highlight a handful of words that I want my students to know as we move into this unit. I'm going to use this for maybe for pre-teaching vocabulary. I highlighted my words. You can highlight as many of these as you want. And then I'm going to go over here and click on vocabulary. So it's the one that looks like a little bulleted list. And when I click on it, the first time I saw this, it felt like magic to me. And what Read and Write is doing is creating a new Google Doc on my drive. And it is inputting a really gorgeous graphic organizer where it has pulled all of these things into, it's pulled them into a graphic organizer using the words, the meanings, any kind of symbols that can connect to it. And then I got a place for notes. And maybe I want those notes to be synonyms or antonyms. I can go in here and put that. Maybe what I want my kids to do is to give me a, give me a real world example of where you've seen this, or, you use it in a sentence for me. That's my dog, sorry. The kids across the street are getting out of school and she likes to say hello in a very aggressive way. So what I really love about this is that it's fully editable, that I can say, no, I just want to shorten this up. My kids don't need this really long definition, but students can also create these on their own, right? So they can go out and again, be in charge of like, these are the words I want to know more about. These are the words that I want to add to my word list, right? And they can go in and edit this and share it with you if they want to. Anything to add with this, Kelly? Things that you see your kids using?
I forgot to unmute. I also like to give them the opportunity to insert, for certain students, to insert their own symbol, or to have them create their own symbol. Because some of my students really enjoy having that artistic or creative expression, or giving them the option if they would prefer to write a sentence or create a symbol. Some of them really do like that option.
I think that also kind of gets into some cultural responsiveness with regard to understanding language, right? Because certainly you attach certain experiences and meaning to words that might be different than the experiences and meanings that I attach to words. So I think it also kind of kicks the door open for that as well, right? Yes. So I'm going to go back. I want to show just a couple more things here. The piece that I feel like we absolutely have got to show, and then Kelly and I are going to talk about how Read and Write has helped humanize learning in her classroom when they can't be together. So you've seen me a couple of times highlight, like select my highlights and hit this little broom. That's the broom that's going to clear out your highlights. So if you want to get rid of them, just clear out those highlights right there. The last tool that I want to show you is the Simplify Page tool. And when I click on the Simplify Page tool, it actually opens up this whole treasure trove of accessibility features. And so it's actually taken all of just the text of this article. And now what I can do as a learner who might need simplified text or prefer some simplified text, I can actually use these plus and minus buttons right over here to shorten this text up. That's not changing the word choice, and it's not changing the sentence structure, okay? Because one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're not lowering expectations for learners who may struggle. We want to make sure that they get access to the same materials and that we give them the tools they need to raise them up to those goals that they want to reach, right? But this really puts kiddos in charge of how much or how little information they want to take on at one time. I used to ask my kids to use this for just kind of getting kind of an abstract of an article to find out, do you really want to read more about this as you're researching? One of the things that students can do also, or any, and I keep saying students, but the truth is it's any user. You can actually change this over to a high contrast setting. So instead of going black on white, you can do white on black. You can also have got blue and yellow options down here. One of the things I also love about this is that you can change the font size. So this is highly customizable. When you start talking about, one of the first checkpoints in the UDL framework is customizing a display of information. And one of the things I can remember thinking is, what the heck did that mean? Well, to me, this is the epitome of customizing your display of information, right? So I can change my font size. I can even go in here and change my font itself. If I have students who require support for dyslexia, I can change this to a font that is more conducive to learners who may need that. I can change the spacing and all of this, right? But you'll notice I still have access to all my tools up here. I can still use dictionary, picture dictionary. I can still get my read aloud features, and I can use my highlighters, my vocabulary tool. I can still use all of these things, right? So I really love this because it's so rich with accessibility. And again, it gets into those things that maybe they're articulated as accommodations that students need and must have. But once you show this to students, when I showed this to my little guy, he always bumps the font up on a web page because he's little, right? There's a reason that children's books are written in those great big fonts because it's easier for those little eyes to follow. So he can go out and customize that display. He won't always probably use that, but right now that's a really great tool for him to take charge of his own learning. So Kelly, I'm going to flip over here I'm just going back into this Google Doc where I put my highlights before, because I want you, if you could please, I'm gonna show them the last thing here is a voice note, and I'm just going to use 1 minute, exactly 1 minute to talk about voice note. Voice note is a way of dropping in an audio comment. If you're used to putting in comments into a Google Doc, now you have access to put your voice into a Google Doc, which used to be something nice to do. Now that we can't always be together and we're in hybrid and remote learning situations, it becomes something that's kind of necessary to be able to do, right? To create humanization and to create connection and learning when it feels like it might not be there. I just click on voice note. It opens up a 1 minute recording for me. I click on this, the microphone, and I can start talking. I can activate background knowledge. I can provide feedback. I'm going to let Kelly talk more about that. I'm just going to hit that stop, and I can either listen to myself and make sure it's exactly what I want to leave for my learners by clicking on play, or I can just click insert. And it's actually turning this into an audio file, and it's going to drop it right into the right-hand side of this document, exactly as it would if I were leaving a Google comment, as I would normally do. So, so while this is processing, then you can see, here it is. It's shown up here, and when I click play, well, it's not being very nice to me right now. I'm going to let Kelly talk about how she uses this. Ordinarily, you would hear me talking like the thing I just recorded. Kelly, go ahead and can you talk a little about how you have used this? And then I want to make sure that all of our folks today get a chance to ask questions.
Sure. This is a great way to integrate students who are hybrid and students who are in the classroom and to get them to meld with one another. We've done an activity where students are looking at a poem, and some students are analyzing the poem by leaving voice notes, and other students are breaking down maybe the structure of the poem, and other students are looking at, like what's actually going on in the poem, paraphrasing or whatever. But that could work for anything really. Like it could be a math problem, or it could be, science labs, or looking at a historical document. Like, it doesn't have to be a poetry thing. But, just getting students to work together and hearing each other is just such a different thing than, something that we're just really missing right now. And this is one easy way, but also limiting. That 1 minute timer is really kind of an important thing, because you do have some students who would just go on and on and on if they had the chance. And so that does give them a very set time frame, and they must be concise and they must be thoughtful. And that's also a really important skill.
One of the things I love with this, and then I want to turn this back over to Louise in the AEM Center, but one of the things I really love that I saw in my second grader's Google Doc recently that he had pulled up, because we had some snow days last week, and there was actually a voice note in there telling him, if you need to take a break now, please get up, stretch your legs, do some jumping jacks. It was a bit of self-regulation for, step away and take a break. But it was so nice to hear, he hit play and there was his teacher telling him, time to take a break, guys.
Yeah.
Louise, I am so happy that you invited us to be here with you, and I'm just over the moon about the things that Kelly is doing in her classroom. And I know that we're running short on time, but I do want to turn this back over and see if there are any questions or anything that we can answer for our participants.
Thank you so much, Joni and Kelly, for all those great insights and strategies that I hope you all will find helpful as you try out Read and Write, and try it out with your own students and with yourself as well, because we're all learners, right? We're lifelong learners. So we have a few minutes left. And so if you have any questions, as I said, Katie has been doing excellent work in the chat, answering a number of your questions. But if you have any last minute questions that you want to drop into the chat, we'll see if Joni or for anybody in the presentation, please go ahead and share those in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible in the last 4 minutes. And then Joni, let me share my screen, because I just have a couple of slides to share at the end here. All right, that will give you a chance to take a breath as well, because you've been presenting for the last 50 minutes. So let's see, you should be seeing my slides now, right? Are you all able to see my slides there?
Yes, we can.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Joni and Kelly, for that excellent presentation. If you have any questions after this presentation, obviously you can reach out to Joni. So her email is j.degner, D-E-G-N-E-R, @texthelp.com. So that's another way that you can stay in touch, and we can do some follow-up on your questions. And then just remember, we shared this link in the chat a number of times, but as an educator, you can get access to Texthelp, the premium. You can get premium access over on the Texthelp website. So I encourage you to try that out, take advantage of it, and try out some of the tools that both Kelly spoke about and then Joni demoed today.
And I just want to add, we had one question come into the chat about higher education, and how can I investigate Texthelp solutions in my higher ed setting? And one of the things I want to say is we have lots of fantastic partnerships in higher education. And we at Texthelp, all you have to do is contact us at texthelp.com. It's TEXTHELP.com. And we are happy to set any school districts or any higher ed institutions up with a complimentary 60-day trial of Read and Write. So you can turn it on for all of your staff and your learners, and really easy to get that access.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Joni. And I'm a Texthelp user myself. I love that simplify feature. It really helps me out as someone with a visual impairment. When I'm surfing the web, it's something that I use all the time to simplify the page and remove some of that visual clutter. And then my visual impairment has gotten worse in the last couple of months. So in addition to being on Zoom a lot, I'm really taking advantage of that feature of using the text-to-speech along with the simplify feature. So as Joni mentioned, you can use a number of these features in combination with each other. It's a really powerful combination. So I just want to wrap up here. Again, if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to either Texthelp or to us through the AEM Center. and we'll make sure that those questions get to the right person to answer them. I do want to invite you to the next webinar in our series. So on March 23rd, we're going to be joined by Book Creator. This is a fantastic tool for creating interactive, media-rich books that, not only as a teacher you can create, but your students themselves can create these books to share their understanding and their knowledge. And you can register for that webinar by going to the AEM Center website on the events page where you register for this webinar today. And then the final thing is that we really appreciate your feedback. We're always trying to improve these webinars. So we are going to share a survey in the chat, but also you'll get a link to this survey after the webinar. So please share your feedback with us. We'll be happy to share that feedback also with the presenters today. I'm sure they appreciate that. And please stay connected. Stay connected with the AEM Center. You can reach us in a variety of different ways. You can email us. We're at aem@cast.org. You can always reach out to us on the socials. So on Twitter, we're at cast_UDL. And on Facebook, we're at castudl. So with that, we've reached the end of our time together this afternoon. I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I want to thank Joni and Kelly for an excellent presentation. There are lots of great insights that I'm sure will be really helpful for you as you implement Read and Write in your classrooms. And as always, I want to thank my partner at the AEM Center, Leslie O'Callaghan, who's been doing some of the sharing in the chat, and Bobby from ACS Captioning for providing the captions this afternoon. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you stay safe, and I hope we see you again real soon on another AEM Center webinar. Take care, everybody. Be kind.